Sebastian Vettel's retirement was a bittersweet affair for everyone invested in Formula One. He just wrapped up an incredible career with 4 world championships to his name, and yet it still felt a bit too premature as he wasn't that old. That said, there is still hope to see him return to the sport, albeit in a different capacity. In today's video, we'll talk about Seb's future plans and more, so keep watching. First off, Vettel could return to F1 sooner rather than later. Even though the German had been teetering on the edge of leaving the sport for a while, it still felt weird when we saw him pull the trigger. After all, even though he wasn't winning stuff anymore, he was still acting as a mentor to many younger drivers on the grid. Not to mention, he legitimately turned into one of the leading figures in the sport alongside the likes of Lewis Hamilton as he advocated for change and social justice. So when Vettel left Aston Martin at the end of the 2022 season, the paddock wasn't just losing a 4-time world champion and a leader. The departure of a key figure in the racing community has already impacted the 2023 season, as evident by the stricter regulations imposed by the FIA on drivers' freedom to express political opinions. These changes clearly indicate that individuals' influence and the void their absence has left. Although Sebastian Vettel's racing career may have ended, he still has a deep love and passion for the sport. Before his retirement, Vettel frequently expressed his uncertainty about how he would adapt to life without motorsport, as it has been a central part of his life for so long. Despite hanging up his racing gloves, Vettel's love for the sport seems strong. And guess what? Red Bull's chief advisor, Helmut Marko, also thinks the German won't be away from the sport for too long, saying that a potential top management opportunity could be up for grabs if the 4-time champion wants it. Up next, Marko thinks Vettel would be a good fit for his role. Of course, if Seb does decide to return to the sport in some management role, it wouldn't be the first time a top driver would have done so. In fact, we don't even have to look that far back, as Niki Lauda himself was a top advisor at Mercedes before he passed away. Besides, with how he's developed over the past few years, especially with his role at Aston Martin and how he's dealt with everything there, you can't argue against the idea either. The man is, without a doubt, a born leader and knows what he's talking about. Plus, he's also incredibly eloquent and can speak many different languages, which makes him a great fit for a negotiator's role like, say, Helmut Marko. Now, the Red Bull chief advisor is one of, if not the most clever operators in the business. He's done an impossibly good job of scouting out top talent for the team and managing all the drivers. Seriously, just go down the list. Vettel, Verstappen, Ricciardo, Sainz. It's super impressive. Oh, and guess what? He also happens to be looking for a replacement because he's getting really old and would like to retire at some point. In fact, he even mentioned how he'd soon be turning 80 years old, which according to him is a lot. So he said that it's not impossible to see Vettel returning for a senior management role, whether that's his own position as Red Bull's chief advisor or somewhere else. What's more, Marko had a conversation with Vettel, as we mentioned earlier. Even though the German's probably done with driving, at least for now, we still expect to see him around the paddock during the year, and that, in and of itself, is enough to reignite his love for the sport. On top of that, the fact that he announced his retirement so early into the season meant that everyone could prepare for it. So, the second half of the 2022 season felt like a tribute to him as we inched closer to his final race. Seriously, there were questions about his future at almost every single press conference. Plus, people couldn't stop asking him to stay longer either. Hamilton, for instance, said that the 4-time champion would definitely return after his break, comparing him to Fernando Alonso, who also returned to the sport after a hiatus. And of course, we also saw Sebastian speaking to top execs in the sport a lot more than usual during the latter half of the season, which would suggest that he's got something brewing up. In fact, Helmut Marko even admitted that he had a conversation with the Germans about a top management position. Moreover, he added that the idea clearly appealed to Vettel and that he'd certainly have the potential and the personality for it. Still, the Austrian concluded that they're willing to let him plant a few trees, pointing towards Seb's current effort to raise climate change awareness. Coming up, Horner has also kept the door open for Seb. Yep, Helmut Marko isn't the only person from Red Bull who wants to see Vettel taking the reins at the team. The team boss, Christian Horner himself, has mentioned before that he'd like to see the German be a part of the team's fabric in the future. He talked about how the four-time world champion will always be a part of the team's history. And to emphasize this, he pointed to the fact that they've even named a building after him. Moreover, the 49-year-old also claimed that Seb's always been obsessed with data, which would make him a good fit for a management position within the team. Even if the legend decides to turn down the opportunity, however, Horner will keep the door open as, according to him, Vettel will always be a huge part of what Red Bull has done and who they are. Not to mention, Vettel would excel in a management role. Alright, now here's the thing. It seems like everyone wants to see Sebastian return to the sport in one way or another, but the question remains, does he even want to do it? The answer to that might be more complicated than most people would like. You see, the German's done a lot for the sport over his career, and in some ways, he is the ambassador of Formula One alongside Lewis Hamilton. He's gone from being just a driver to becoming a global star, as he's getting involved in all sorts of stuff. For instance, he has even tackled the idea of debating politicians and explaining why climate change awareness is so important. Plus, there are all these campaigns that he's running for social justice, the betterment of the sport, and just general welfare. The point is that the man's got a lot of stuff on his plate right now, and he's not exactly free to walk into the paddock right now. In fact, that's what Marko meant by his comment about planting trees as well. Besides, we're sure he wants to spend some time with his family, too, since Formula One can be an incredibly demanding sport, especially in terms of the time you get to spend at home. Although he is a four-time champion, there is still much for him to learn in terms of management in the sport. He will continue to observe and learn from experienced professionals before returning to competition. Moving on, Vettel admits talks with Mercedes to partner Hamilton. Yep, you heard that right. Apparently, we could have seen Sebastian and Lewis racing in the same team, as the German confirmed that he did talk with Mercedes about the move. Do you know what's even more frustrating though? All this happened during his time at Ferrari, so he hadn't lost his mojo back then, and honestly, it could have been one of, if not the strongest driver lineup on the grid had he actually decided to join. Why didn't he go for the move then? He said there was a real opportunity, as he spoke with Niki Lauda about it too. The issue, however, was that it was halfway through his Ferrari stint, and he didn't want to abandon his dream of winning with the Scuderia just yet. Speaking on Formula One's Beyond the Grid podcast, the four-time champion admitted that it obviously would have been a big deal because back then, Hamilton was still dominating the championships and was their number one driver. So it would have been an interesting dynamic because the Silver Arrows had to deal with two superstars in the team simultaneously. That said, Vettel still said that it would have been a great challenge to team up with someone like Lewis Hamilton and that he would have enjoyed it thoroughly. Then again, he was way too committed to Ferrari at that point, so the talks weren't that serious. Finally, Vettel and Hamilton got closer after the Baku incident. Remember, since he's talking about halfway through his Ferrari period, this would have been around 2018-ish. And by that point, Lewis and Seb's fiery rivalry had started to bloom into a pretty wholesome bromance. In fact, the German even explained that he would have enjoyed racing with the Brit back then because they got along really well. Not to mention, that moment during the 2017 Azerbaijan Grand Prix was behind them, and they weren't holding grudges anymore. Now, if you don't know, Vettel was running in second place behind Hamilton during a safety car period at Baku in that race. And as the seven-time champion slowed down to create some gap from the safety car, Seb randomly rammed into the back of him, which of course was this massive controversy. Additionally, the former Ferrari driver had previously accused Hamilton of brake testing him, but he has since admitted that he was emotional and allowed his feelings to cloud his judgment. He now recognizes his mistake. The recent incident brought Vettel and the other individual closer together, as it caused them to reflect on their relationship and have a discussion. As a result, they now view the incident as a simple misunderstanding and have grown closer because of it. That's a wrap for this video. Would you have liked to see Vettel race alongside Hamilton at Mercedes? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.